Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an important Arab Affairs. And today, Tunisia hosted the 8th International Conference on Africa Development, the TICAD, which Japan is holding. This conference, the Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli is attending on behalf of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, along with 30 heads of states and governments and heads of governments. The conference has lots and lots of significance and has several priorities, particularly the priorities of development in the African continent, particularly after the coronavirus, plus, of course, the high attachment given by Africa at large and Asia in or within the framework of the Asia-Africa cooperation, with the focus of the development in Africa. Main priorities that are being focused are axes of sustainable development, integral growth, achieving stable society, and achieving sustainable security and stability in the Black continent. We'll be speaking about this in our episode today. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick break and we'll come back.
نحن لدينا مصير مشترك. مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية، فالاتحاد الإفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتدرس بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها معدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
عند طريق الإسماعيلية الزراعي مرورا بالمحافظية القليوبية ثم القاهرة ثم الجيزة وينتهي عند محور الضبعة بغرب تقاطع طريق القاهرة الإسكندرية الصحراوي بمسافة 8
كلف المشروع هيتكلف تقريبا 360 مليار جنيه خلال سنتين. هيتعمل طبقا لأقصى المعايير العلمية والتكنولوجية والفنية في كل شيء.
Well, welcome back, and speaking about TECAD 8, which is hosted by Tunisia, we have with us over the phone Dr. Yomn Hamaqi, Professor of Economics. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Yomn.
And good afternoon.
Now, this is the 8th TECAD conference, which is being hosted by Tunisia, and the main focus is the development in Africa, particularly after the coronavirus pandemic. First, let me, we need to understand what is the TECAD so people would understand what we are speaking about and the significance of this conference.
Actually, the significance is that the TECAD is, a mechanism in which Japan is offering support to the African continent. And we have to refer to the ministerial meeting that happened in March 2022 in order to specify what are the main challenges confronting the African continent, specifically after COVID-19 and the Ukrainian-Russian war. Three pillars have been identified to be addressed in this meeting. First of all is about economy, since the continent is going to suffer from low economic growth for the coming period, affected by the repercussions of the war and the pandemic. The second point is regarding the conflicts, political conflicts and arming conflicts in the continent, which is actually affecting seriously the capability of the continent to achieve a better economic development. And from here it comes socio-economic challenges of poverty and inequality of income distribution, as well as unemployment and humanization and feminization of poverty. All these can be represented as challenges confronting the continent, African continent. And if we add to that the challenges of climate change, we can see to how extent that the continent is quite fragile in order to address the repercussions of climate change after these challenges, and to large extent the resilience of the African continent can be regarded as one of the weak, a very weak capability of resilience compared to all countries of the world. And from here it comes that Japan can be considered as one of the major economies in the world, and it has a very good reputation in supporting developing countries. And I can mention several examples regarding supporting economic empowerment of poor people, transfer of technology to the continent, the participation of Japan in COVAX in order to supply vaccination for the continent. So a lot of activities that have been done by Japan in order to support the African continent. And, you know, all these activities are built on a win-win situation, since still the African continent is a very important source of raw materials for Japan, as well as a market for their products.
Right. Dr. Yomn, we're speaking here about a conference that is held at the backdrop, as you said, respectively, of this Ukraine war, and is also held at the backdrop of 2 years of corona pandemic virus, which we have been reeling from both. We're speaking about the whole economies of the whole world are reeling, is really reeling from those two crises, consecutive crises. We're speaking here about Asia and Africa. Japan representing Asia from one side, Africa with all the priorities of sustainable development. From your point of view, what opportunities does the African or the Black continent open for Japan at this very upcoming stage, and how can Japan help Africa in its agenda for sustainable development?
A lot, actually, of potentialities can be regarded within, as it has been mentioned, within Sustainable Development Goals of Africa 2063. Most important from my point of view that Japan can support the African continent is regarding the transfer of technology. We all know that in order to achieve sustainable development, we need to to acquire technology, because, the impact of climate change is, going to affect seriously poor people, and it will necessitate changing completely, like renewable energy needs technology, like how to address the impact of drought and, floods and all the repercussions of climate change. It needs technology. So from here it comes that the most important, support by Japan can be by transferring technology into the continent. And this can be done on a win-win situation. Why? Because the continent is quite rich of arable land to be cultivated, and Japan is having scarcity in food production and agriculture sector. And from here it comes that Japan can transfer technology in the agricultural field and renewable energy in order to support activities to cultivate land in the most efficient way and to rationalize using land. And from here it comes that these products can be exported into Japan according to the standards, the international standards. So this is a win-win situation that can be done, and I think that we have a lot of examples to prove that, but still they are scattered. They are not, reaching the point of a holistic approach to have an impact on the performance of the continent regarding improving agricultural production. Still, the continent, is still affected by the role of multinationals, that they are exploiting most of these resources on their benefit and against the benefit of people in the African continent. So a lot of issues that need to be discussed properly, and in order to enhance such cooperation and to be built on a win-win, action, so that all parties can benefit.
Dr. Yomn, finally here, if I may ask you, in order to achieve the sustainable development we acquire, we need to work on many factors. Of course, the economic one for the stability of the continent, along with the security one and peace and security in the continent, but also the social one. And the social one, why I'm speaking about the social one, because we need the continent to be prepared for the upcoming challenges through education and scientific approaches.
Indeed, yes, I agree with you. We all know that still education needs in the continent a lot of reform to be done in order to address youth properly and to have a graduates coping with the requirement of the labor market. Still, we have a lot of challenges regarding that, and from here it comes that unemployment of youth in the continent can be considered as one of the highest rate of unemployment, besides unemployment of women and the participation of African women in economic activities. So all of this, like you mentioned, social dimension to be taken into consideration can be regarded as top priority for the continent, actually, and Japan can help. And I remind myself with the example of Japanese schools in Egypt performing quite well, and to how extent, it has been these schools attracting a lot of Egyptians to benefit from the type of education, the Japanese type of education that builds the personality of children, so that we can expect that the graduate can be quite coping with the requirement of labor market. And from here it comes that building human resources, as you mentioned, and if we add health services too, I believe this can affect seriously the capability of the African continent to achieve sustainable development goals.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Yomn Hamaqi, Professor of Economics, thank you so much for being with us over the phone and for your input here. And before we move on with our discussion, let's take a break and we'll come back for more discussion.